I'd been asleep less than an hour when I heard the tapping. Not the kind you mistake for tree branches or restless rain, but something sharper. Intentional. I blinked against the darkness, disoriented, heart already thudding as I sat up in bed. The storm outside was in full tantrum, rain whipping sideways against the house, wind howling like it had a personal vendetta. I thought I might have dreamed it. Then it came again. 3 quick taps. A pause. Then 2 more. It wasn't random. It was a rhythm. I swung my legs over the side of the bed, wincing as my feet touched the cold floorboards. My knees ached. Everything ached, but that's the price of 72 years. I grabbed the flashlight from my nightstand, the one with duct tape around the cracked handle, and crept toward the window. The power had gone out sometime after dinner, and without the porch light, the room was swallowed in shadows. Only the occasional flicker of lightning gave shape to anything. I pulled the curtain aside and nearly dropped the flashlight. 2 small faces stared back at me through the glass. Pale, drenched, shivering. My grandchildren. Lily and Leo. My stomach dropped. I fumbled with the lock and shoved the window open just enough to hear their voices over the wind. Grandpa. Lily's voice trembled. We didn't know where else to go. Leo leaned in close. They said they're coming tonight. That's when Lily whispered it. I don't want them to hurt you, Grandpa. There's a moment in a man's life when instinct kicks in, not the kind that's loud and reckless, but the kind that rises up quiet and certain. I didn't ask questions. I didn't even put shoes on. I reached out and helped them through the window, one at a time, careful not to let them slip on the wet sill. Their jackets were soaked through. Their socks squished with every step. I wrapped them in a throw blanket from the foot of my bed and pulled them close to the fireplace, where the last embers still glowed faintly. What the hell are you doing out there? I asked, kneeling in front of them. It's nearly midnight. And this storm. They were yelling again, Leo said. Dad said it's happening tonight, and Mom didn't argue this time. Lily's eyes brimmed with tears, but she swallowed them down like a soldier. We waited until they went to bed. Took the spare key and climbed out the back window. We thought maybe you'd know what to do. Jesus. I stood slowly, heart hammering, trying to piece together what the hell it was. The kids had always been a little guarded when they talked about home life, but nothing like this. Darren, my son-in-law, had always rubbed me the wrong way, but Rachel, she was my daughter. My only child. There was no way she'd let something truly bad happen. Right? Except the look in Leo's eyes said otherwise. Did they ever hurt you? I asked gently. They both shook their heads. But they didn't speak. Silence. That was louder than anything. I made cocoa the old-fashioned way, powdered mix, hot water from the kettle, and a little extra sugar. They sipped quietly, curled on the couch. The storm outside started to mellow, but the unease in the room didn't. What do you mean, they're coming tonight? I finally asked. Leo looked at his sister, then back at me. They've been talking about money. A lot. Dad's been yelling about how you're sitting on a fortune and won't share it. Said this house should have been theirs years ago. They said, you'd sign it over. One way or another, Lily added. Tonight. I felt the floor shift beneath me. Not literally, but close enough. All the little things I'd shrugged off came rushing back, Rachel's sudden visits, her questions about my will, Darren dropping hints about retirement homes, with nurses on staff, even though I still mow my own damn lawn. A knock at the front door shattered the moment. 3 quick knocks. A pause. Then 2 more. Same rhythm. The cocoa nearly slipped from my hand. The twins froze. That's the sound they made, Lily whispered. I turned off the flashlight. My voice was calm, quiet. Go. Upstairs. My room. Lock the door, hide in the closet, and don't come out unless I call you. Grandpa. Now. They bolted, barefoot and scared, up the stairs without a sound. I moved to the foyer, careful not to let my silhouette cross in front of the windows. Another knock came, this time slower, more deliberate. Someone jiggled the handle. I gripped the old Remington shotgun mounted above the fireplace. I hadn't fired it in years, but I cleaned it every month out of habit. Tonight, that habit might save my life. "Frank," came a voice through the door. "Rachel. It's just me and Darren. We were worried." Worried. At midnight. In a storm. After their children had just told me they were planning to take everything I had. "Go home, Rachel," I said through the door. "Dad, don't be ridiculous. Just open the door." I said go home. Silence. Then Darren's voice, slick and smooth, "Come on, old man. Let's not make this harder than it has to be." I cocked the shotgun. Loud. Intentionally. The silence that followed was glorious. "You have 5 seconds to get off my porch," I said. "Next time you knock, I won't answer with words." Thunder cracked. Then footsteps. Retreating. I waited 10 minutes before moving. Then I checked every lock, closed every curtain, and climbed the stairs. Leo and Lily sat huddled together in the closet. I opened the door and knelt beside them. "You're safe," I said. "For now." But even as I said it, I knew nothing would ever be the same again. By morning, the storm had passed, but its residue lingered in every creak of the floorboards and every glance between me and the twins. I hadn't slept, not really. Just dozed in the hallway chair outside my bedroom, shotgun resting across my lap, listening for footsteps that never came. Lily and Leo finally fell asleep curled up on my bed, sharing the old Afghan their grandmother had knitted years ago. They looked younger when they were sleeping, smaller, more fragile. Like the weight they'd carried the night before had lifted just enough for their bodies to remember how to rest. I made scrambled eggs and toast when I heard their soft footsteps coming down the stairs. No mention of the night before. Not at first. They ate in silence, glancing at the front window like they expected someone to be watching. "They didn't come back," I said. Leo nodded slowly. "Not yet. We cleared the plates together." Leo insisted on drying, Lily on stacking. She liked organizing things, always had, said it made her feel like the world made more sense when things were in neat lines. I didn't tell her the world didn't give a damn about neat lines. By 9 a.m., the sun was shining like nothing had happened. You could almost believe the night before was a bad dream. But I knew better. At exactly 10:12 a.m., a car pulled into the gravel driveway. A new black sedan, Rachel's. She always liked driving cars that looked like they belonged to someone more successful than they were. She stepped out first. Darren followed. Their clothes were perfect. Rachel in a lemon-yellow sweater and pearl earrings. Darren in his pressed slacks and button-down. Both smiling too wide, too rehearsed. I didn't move from the porch swing. "Well, good morning, Dad." Rachel called out, her voice syrupy. "We just came to check on you after that wild storm." Darren lifted a bakery box. "Brought pastries. And coffee from that place you like, what's it called? Bean Barn." I just stared at them. Leo and Lily sat inside, behind the living room curtains, peeking through the folds. I'd told them to stay hidden until I gave the all-clear. I wasn't sure that moment would come. Rachel and Darren climbed the porch steps with exaggerated cheerfulness, like actors on a stage they thought I couldn't see through. They set the box down on the patio table and sat without waiting for permission. "We were so worried," Rachel said. "You didn't answer our calls last night." "There was a storm," I replied, flat. Darren chuckled. "Which is exactly why we came. Thought maybe you'd lost power. Phone's down. You usually come uninvited with breakfast? I asked. Rachel flinched, barely, then forced another smile. Can't we just check in? We missed you. I wanted to say, you missed my house. But I held my tongue. Let them talk. They went on about the weather, the road conditions, how Darren's office was being remodeled. They never asked why I looked like I hadn't slept. Or why the kids weren't at school. They just smiled and nodded, waiting for me to blink. Then Rachel pulled out a small black briefcase from beneath the chair. Dad, she said gently, I do want to talk to you about something important. Here it comes. It's just a precaution, she said, flipping open the latches. In case something ever happened to you. We want to make sure everything is taken care of. For the kids. For the family. She pulled out papers. A lot of them. Legal-sized, neatly clipped together. Power of attorney, Darren said. Just until we get some things sorted. And an early transfer of property, Rachel added. We can make it official now, just to avoid probate. It'll save time. Money. Headaches. I didn't touch the papers. Didn't even lean forward. Why the rush? I asked. Rachel blinked. What do you mean? You don't visit for months. Now you're suddenly worried about probate? It's not like that, Darren cut in. We just thought it was the responsible thing. I looked him square in the eyes. Responsible for who? He didn't flinch. That was the most dangerous thing about Darren, he'd learned how to lie without blinking. Rachel reached for my hand, but I pulled it back. I'll read it later, I said. But. I said later. They exchanged a look. Not irritation. Not concern. Calculation. They stood after that, smiling again like the visit had gone well. You sure you don't want help looking over those? Rachel asked. I can explain the fine print. I'm not blind, I replied. She nodded. Of course not. Just, think about it, okay? I watched them walk back to the car, hand in hand like two people who still believed they controlled the narrative. I waited until the sedan disappeared down the road before going back inside. The twins ran to me. What did they say? Leo asked. I held up the paperwork. They want the house, I said. Officially. Lily's voice was barely a whisper. Are you going to give it to them? I looked at her. Then at Leo. And finally out the window at the trees still dripping from the storm. No, I said. But we're going to let them think I might. The papers sat on my kitchen table like a viper coiled to strike. I didn't touch them that first day, not really. Just glanced at the heading, limited power of attorney, and then let my eyes drift past the legal jargon to the place they'd already marked with a yellow post-it, sign here, Dad. Next to that, a date already filled in. They'd assumed I'd sign it without question. I left it there, untouched, while I brewed coffee and stared out the window. The fall breeze rattled the trees beyond the back porch. Leaves had begun their slow descent into death, crisp and curling at the edges, like time itself was reminding me it didn't wait for anyone. Not even a 72-year-old grandfather with a shotgun under his bed and a target on his bank account. Leo came into the kitchen first. Still sleepy, rubbing his eyes. Are they coming back today? Maybe, I said, setting a mug of cocoa in front of him. But we're not going to be surprised next time. He looked at the papers, then at me. Is that what they tried to make you sign? Not yet, I replied. But they will. Lily appeared next, already dressed, her hair tied back. She had that look, the same one her grandmother used to wear before dealing with my old boss or calling the insurance company. Fierce, determined. They think you're weak, she said, hopping onto a stool. I smirked. That's the plan. We spent the next hour reading those documents aloud, word by word. I wanted the twins to hear it, not just the betrayal, but the trickery. Darren had written most of it, or at least worked closely with a lawyer who didn't mind greasing the gears. It wasn't technically fraudulent, just slippery as hell. If I signed that paper, Darren would have full control over all my assets. My bank accounts. The deed to the house. My pension. Even the power to decide if I should be relocated to a care facility. And the transfer of property form? That would have handed over the title to my house immediately, under the pretense of estate efficiency. It didn't take a lawyer to see what they were doing. It just took a little common sense and a long memory. Why would they do this? Leo asked, his brow furrowed. You're their dad. No, I said quietly. I'm a resource. And they're in trouble. How do you know? Lily whispered. Because desperate people always reveal themselves in the details. It wasn't a guess. I'd seen it in their eyes, the edges fraying behind their smiles. The way Rachel's foot tapped beneath the patio table. The fact that Darren's tie wasn't his usual expensive silk, but a cheaper synthetic knockoff. Their car. Rented. I spotted the barcode on the windshield. They weren't just visiting to check in. They were circling. After lunch, I slipped the documents into a folder and headed to the shed. The kids followed me barefoot, crunching leaves underfoot. Inside, buried beneath my fishing gear and old tax records, was a fireproof lockbox. I pulled it out, popped the lid, and removed the folder marked estate plan. I'd made some preparations after the heart attack. Wrote a will. Named Evelyn, my longtime friend and accountant, as executor. Everything had been set up properly back then. But now? Now I needed to be smarter. Meaner, if I'm being honest. I called Evelyn that evening. Took you long enough, she said, the moment she answered. I saw Rachel and Darren at First Federal last week, whispering with the manager like they were shopping for a loan with Monopoly money. They're circling the drain, I said. They're circling you. I need to meet, I said. Tomorrow. Her tone shifted. Come early. I'll bring coffee. And bring the twins. The next morning, I dropped the kids at her place and drove straight to the law offices of Marvin and Tate. Evelyn had already arranged for her nephew, Blake, to meet us, a clean-cut, 30-something estate attorney with a voice like gravel and a mind like a scalpel. Here's what we're going to do, Blake said, flipping through the documents Darren and Rachel had given me. You're going to act like the old man they think you are. Nod, smile, maybe even pretend to hesitate. But don't sign a damn thing. He opened a blank folder. Meanwhile, we'll restructure your assets. Move everything into an irrevocable trust. No one touches it without your consent. And when you're gone, it goes to the twins. Not to Rachel. I asked, though I already knew the answer I wanted. Blake's smirk was all the answer I needed. It took 3 hours to update the will, reassign the financial beneficiaries, and draft a formal declaration nullifying any unauthorized POA documents. I signed everything in triplicate. Evelyn notarized every page. When it was done, Blake leaned back and folded his hands. Now we let them make the next move. I thanked them both, then picked up the twins. Leo asked the moment he saw me, "Are we still safe?" "Safer than we were yesterday," I said. We spent the afternoon working in the yard, like nothing had changed. Raking leaves, stacking firewood. Lily found an old kite in the shed, and for a few moments, we all forgot about Darren's greasy grin or Rachel's nervous fingers. But as the sun started to set, I saw a car pull into the end of the driveway. Same rented sedan. Rachel stepped out alone this time. She held another folder. Her smile was tighter now, like someone holding back a scream. "Hey, Dad," she called. "We just wanted to update a few things." That night, I couldn't sleep again. Rachel hadn't pushed hard earlier, not yet. She'd only stayed long enough to drop off some updated forms and mention how she and Darren had spoken with a specialist about elder care planning. Her voice had the same sugary tone she'd used as a child when trying to sneak a second cookie off the tray before dinner. But behind her smile, I saw it. Panic. Not just urgency. Panic. The kind that seeps out of someone who's up against a wall and knows the bricks are crumbling. She left with a hug that lasted a beat too long, her voice tight as she whispered, "We just want to make sure you're okay, Dad. We really do." She didn't know it yet, but I'd already burned the bridge she thought she was building. I sat on the edge of my bed, the shotgun still propped against the nightstand, listening to the house settle around me. I had double-checked every lock. Set the chain on the front door. Made sure the twins were asleep. And still I waited, for what, I wasn't sure. Maybe some creak of movement in the dark. A silhouette against the window. Instead, what I got was a knock at my bedroom door. Soft. Hesitant. "Grandpa?" Leo's voice. I opened the door and found both twins standing there, wide awake in their pajamas. Lily clutched her stuffed bear, a ragged thing that had seen better years, and Leo's hands were jammed in the pockets of his robe like he didn't quite know what to do with himself. "We need to talk," he said, eyes flicking toward the hallway. I stepped aside and let them in. They sat together at the foot of the bed while I took my chair. Lily was the first to speak. "You remember how we said they were coming for the house?" "Yeah." "Well, there's more." Leo swallowed. His throat clicked in the silence. "We didn't know how to say it before," he said. "But we heard them. A lot. Talking at night. Arguing. Not just about money." Lily leaned forward. "Mom said, we'll get the house and his savings before the end of the month, or we lose everything." My chest tightened. "She promised us things," Leo said. "If we didn't say anything." I kept my voice calm. "What kind of things?" "A puppy," Lily whispered. "A real one. Not just a picture like before. She said it'd be ours, even let us name it." Leo nodded. "And a new console. The VR kind." I closed my eyes for a moment. Let that sit in my bones. Rachel had always known how to motivate, how to barter emotion for silence. But bribing her own children to keep quiet about a plot to steal everything from me? That was something darker. "She said you'd understand," Lily added, her voice trembling. "That you'd do it for us. That you'd want us to be safe. And if we didn't keep quiet," Leo's voice trailed off. I leaned in. "What did she say?" He looked up at me, his face pale and older than 10 years had any right to be. "She said you'd get sick again. That we might not be able to see you after." I couldn't move. Couldn't speak. I just sat there, caught between heartbreak and rage. "She's been crying a lot," Lily whispered. "When she thinks we're asleep. I think she knows it's not working." "She's scared," Leo added. "She should be," I said. The words escaped before I could soften them, but neither twin flinched. They didn't need comfort right now. They needed truth. I stood and paced slowly, thinking aloud. They're in deep debt. That's what this is. They thought they could lie their way out of it, use my name, my house, maybe even my accounts. Lily looked up. "What are you going to do?" "Fight back," I said. They didn't smile. They didn't cheer. They just nodded like soldiers handed a new mission. I knelt beside them. "You two are the only reason I'm still standing," I said. "You were brave to tell me. And now, I need you to keep being brave. Can you do that?" Lily reached out first, grabbing my hand. Leo followed. "We don't want a puppy anymore," she said. I still want the console, Leo muttered, then shrugged. But only if you're okay. I laughed despite the lump in my throat. Fair enough. We stayed like that a while, the three of us on the edge of the bed in the middle of a war no one else could see. After they went back to sleep, I sat there alone, staring at the papers Rachel had left that afternoon. A new power of attorney form, almost identical to the last, but this time, Darren's name had been added in bold letters. They weren't just planning to nudge me into compliance. They were drawing up battle lines. Getting bolder. That's when I noticed something I hadn't before, a small note paperclip to the back page. It was handwritten in Rachel's cursive. Dad, please don't make this harder than it has to be. You always said family comes first. Let us take care of things. You'll be happier this way. Love, R. Let us take care of things. Like I was already gone. Like I was just a signature away from being erased. I folded the note and slid it into my pocket. I wanted to keep it, not as a memory, but as evidence. Evidence that the daughter I'd once rocked to sleep was now circling me like a vulture with a legal pad. I turned off the light and sat in the dark. Not because I was afraid. But because it was time to stop waiting and start planning. Tomorrow, I'd visit Evelyn again. And this time, we wouldn't just talk finances. We'd start setting the trap. Evelyn always kept her home exactly the same, neat, unchanging, and a little too bright, like the past had refused to die inside those walls. Her living room smelled like lavender and paper, the scent of old books and hand-folded linen napkins. The kind of place where secrets didn't last long, not because she'd tell them, but because she'd dig them out of you like splinters. She opened the door before I knocked. Your eyes look worse than mine, she said, squinting behind her bifocals. That means it's serious. I stepped inside and dropped the folder onto her table. They're not just circling, I said. They're trying to bury me alive. With paperwork. Evelyn didn't sit down. She grabbed her glasses chain, looped it over her ears, and flipped open the folder. I see. Another power of attorney form. Darren's name, of course. This signature line's bigger than the last one. And there's a note. Rachel's handwriting. Sweet as syrup. Threatening as cyanide. Evelyn pulled out her pen. She tapped it 3 times against the wood like she was thinking in Morse code. Then it's time to move fast. She walked into the next room and returned with her own folder, thicker, heavier. When she opened it, the air changed. There were deeds, account ledgers, retirement plans from jobs I'd half forgotten I'd worked. A map of my life in statements and legal codes. You sure you want to do this? She asked, her voice low now. Because once we start restructuring, there's no going back. Your daughter, she won't just be mad. She'll come at you. And she won't come alone. I'm not trying to ruin her, I said. I just want to keep what's mine. No, Evelyn replied. You're doing more than that. You're drawing a line. We spent the next 3 hours in the guts of the system, moving funds, liquidating some accounts, and tucking others into corners they wouldn't find unless they had a flashlight, a crowbar, and a court order. Evelyn handled the money like a battlefield surgeon, fast, clean, precise. Put your house into an irrevocable trust, she said, and appoint a trustee. You. She looked up. You sure? You're the only one I trust who doesn't want it. She didn't smile, but her hands stopped shaking when she signed the forms. Blake's already got the trust documents drafted, she added. We'll file them by the end of the week. That makes everything untouchable. Home. Savings. The pension. And your estate won't go through probate. It'll go straight to whoever you name. I nodded. The twins. She paused, then wrote it down. You're cutting Rachel out completely? She asked. I looked at the window for a long time before answering. She cut herself out. Evelyn closed the file, then poured us both a splash of bourbon from a bottle she kept hidden in a hollowed-out dictionary. I didn't drink, not since the heart episode, but I raised the glass in gesture. To old foxes, she said. Still biting. To people who know how to read a ledger, I replied. That evening, I returned home with a fire in my chest, not rage, but resolve. Leo and Lily were outside, raking leaves into lopsided piles. When they saw me pull into the drive, they ran up to the truck. Did you talk to her? Leo asked. She's in, I said. And so is her lawyer nephew. Lily grinned. So we're winning. No, I said. We're surviving. Winning comes later. That night we had soup and grilled cheese for dinner. Something simple. Something human. Lily told me about a book she was reading for school, some fantasy story about a girl who hid in the walls of a castle while her enemies tried to find her. Leo said he wanted to build a treehouse, just in case we need an escape plan. Build it strong, I said. After they were asleep, I sat at the kitchen table with Evelyn's ledger and went over the final checklist. Accounts, sealed. Deeds, transferred. Will, updated. But one thing was missing. Proof. So I did something I'd been avoiding for months. I opened the old chest in the attic, the one with my wedding photos, tax returns from the Reagan years, and my digital camcorder. I'd bought it back in 2003. Barely used it since. I charged the battery. Inserted a fresh tape. Hit record. The red light blinked. And then I started talking. My name is Henry Whitmore. I'm 72. If you're watching this, it means my daughter Rachel and her husband Darren have tried to take what's mine. They've tried to manipulate me. Coerce me. Use my grandchildren to pressure me. I paused. Swallowed. But I'm not stupid. I've spent my whole life building what little I have, and I won't see it stolen through guilt or shame. My assets are no longer accessible to them. They belong to my grandchildren now. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the note Rachel had left, the one she thought would guilt me into compliance. I held it up. This, I said, is how they think they'll win. With sweet words and poisoned promises. I set it down. Not this time. I clicked the camera off and labeled the tape. Then I locked it in the gun cabinet, next to the Remington. Let them come. I'd already lit the fuse. I woke up on my birthday to the smell of something unfamiliar in my own kitchen, expensive bacon and cinnamon. And panic. Leo stood over the stove in an apron 2 sizes too big, frantically flipping pancakes with the wrong side of the spatula. Lily was arranging plates like we were expecting royalty. You two plotting something? I asked, groggy. Leo jumped. Happy birthday, Grandpa. Lily beamed. You weren't supposed to wake up yet. We had a whole plan. I glanced at the window. The sun had barely crested the ridge. This plan involved nearly setting the kitchen on fire. Leo shrugged. Maybe. The table was already set, real silverware, cloth napkins, the chipped teacups Evelyn gave me 20 years ago. Lily had even drawn a little sign that said, Happy birthday, old man in glitter glue. I'm not crying, I muttered. I'm just sweating from my eyes. We had pancakes that tasted like scorched hope, bacon that came out of a box labeled artisan, and orange juice so bitter I was sure it was a joke. Best breakfast I've had in years. I thought maybe that would be the day, quiet, soft. But then Rachel's car rolled up the driveway. Not alone this time. 2 more cars followed. One a white Lexus I'd seen before, Darren's accountant friend, Marcus. The other? A sleek, black SUV with tinted windows and no plates. This wasn't a visit. This was a production. Leo peeked through the curtain. Do we hide? No, I said. Today, we host. The front door opened before I got there, Rachel smiling like she owned the place, carrying a birthday cake in both hands. Happy birthday, Daddy. Behind her, Darren held a bottle of wine. Imported from Italy. Aged 16 years, just like you like it. I didn't drink. Hadn't in years. They knew that. And last came Marcus, the weasel in a grey vest, followed by a fourth man. Tall, younger, clean-cut. He carried a leather briefcase and wore a fake smile like it was glued on. I hope you don't mind, Rachel said, bustling into the kitchen. We just wanted to do something special for you. Unannounced? I asked. She didn't flinch. Surprises are fun. They set up fast. Cake on the table. Wine beside it. Darren started opening drawers like he belonged there. Rachel tried ushering the kids into the living room, so the grown-ups can talk, but Lily clung to my arm. They stay, I said. Everyone froze. But no one argued. Marcus opened the briefcase on the table and pulled out a stack of papers. Just a few birthday things to run by you, he said. Rachel thought now might be a good time to finalize the transfer we discussed. We didn't discuss anything. He chuckled. Right, but you've seen the paperwork. I understand you've had time to think. Rachel leaned over the table. You always said you wanted to make things simple for us, Dad. This does that. Sign these, and everything's handled. And then what? I asked. You list the house, take the accounts, and move me to a nursing home with bingo Tuesdays and sponge baths? Darren's smile twitched. Come on, now. That's not fair. No, I said. What's not fair is using my grandkids as bargaining chips. Telling them I'd be happier this way. Offering them puppies and consoles to keep quiet. That's not just unfair. That's cruel. Rachel's face went pale. Darren's lips parted, ready to deny it, spin it, maybe raise his voice. But I beat him to it. I stepped into the living room and picked up the remote. Before we celebrate, I said, there's a little birthday video I'd like to share. The screen flickered to life. And there I was, me, recorded just days before, sitting in my kitchen, explaining everything. Calm. Collected. Crystal clear. The audio was loud. Rachel and Darren have tried to take what's mine. They've tried to manipulate me. Coerce me. Use my grandchildren to pressure me. The room went quiet. My assets are no longer accessible to them. They belong to my grandchildren now. I turned and watched them. Rachel stood frozen, hands at her sides like a doll mid-fall. Darren's jaw clenched. Marcus looked like he wanted to melt into the floor. The lawyer, the young one, stepped back, already folding his briefcase like he wanted no part of what came next. What is this? Rachel whispered. This, I said, is what it looks like when a man refuses to be stolen from. She took a step forward, voice rising. You're sick. You're not thinking clearly. This is emotional manipulation. That's rich, I replied. Darren muttered something under his breath, something that sounded like, we're screwed, then turned to Marcus. Fix this. But Marcus just shook his head. If he's got that on record, and the trust is already filed. It is, I said. Irrevocable. Effective last week. Evelyn notarized everything. Blake filed it. House, assets, accounts, all locked. And you're not in it, Lily said quietly. Leo stood beside her, arms crossed. I named the twins as beneficiaries, I said. And Evelyn as trustee. They'll get everything when I'm gone. Not a dime to either of you. Rachel's hands began to shake. You can't do this, she whispered. I already did. Silence, thick and cutting. Then I added, but since you brought cake, we might as well eat. The room didn't breathe for nearly 30 seconds. The video paused on a frame of my face mid-sentence, the red glow of the record button still blinking in the bottom corner of the screen. The sound of the last words echoed like gunfire in a canyon. Not a dime to either of you. Rachel blinked. Once. Twice. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Darren was the first to move, quick, angry. He stepped forward, slammed the laptop shut like that would undo what had just happened. "Cute trick, old man," he hissed. "You really think some amateur video is going to hold up legally?" "It's not the video you should worry about," I said, calm. "It's the signature on the trust. The one I made 2 weeks ago." Leo and Lily were still sitting on the couch. Lily reached out and grabbed Leo's hand without looking. Neither of them said a word. They didn't need to. Their eyes were locked on Rachel, who looked like her bones had turned to dust. "You manipulated them," she finally said. Her voice was hollow. "You made them say those things." "No," Leo said, standing. "You did. You promised us a puppy," Lily added. "Then you told us he'd get sick if we didn't stay quiet." Rachel turned toward them, her eyes wide now, not with compassion, but with panic. "Sweetie, we didn't mean." "Don't," I said. "You don't get to play mother now." Darren straightened, trying to take control of the room again. "None of this changes the fact that we deserve something. You think it's fair to leave everything to 2 kids who don't even have a checking account?" "Better them than you," I said. "At least they know what family means." The room's air felt heavy. Like all the lies they'd carried were finally suffocating them. But we weren't done. "Blake," I called out. From the hallway stepped Evelyn's nephew. He wore the same sharp suit from last week and carried a leather folio. His expression was unreadable. "I thought this might be a good time," I said. Rachel's face twisted. "You invited a lawyer to your birthday?" I shrugged. "You invited 3. Blake walked to the table and laid out the documents one by one. He didn't rush. He didn't raise his voice. He just explained. "This," he said, tapping the first page, "is the irrevocable trust. Signed, witnessed, and notarized. All assets have been transferred under it, with Mr. Whitmore as sole executor until his passing." "Meaning?" Darren snapped. "Meaning," Blake replied smoothly, "you have no legal claim to anything. The house. The accounts. The vehicles. Not even the damn lawn mower." Darren stepped forward, finger raised like he was about to launch into some tirade. Blake held up a second document. "This," he said, "is a formal cease and desist. It prohibits either of you from attempting further coercion under penalty of elder exploitation." Rachel let out a strangled laugh. "You think you can scare us with paperwork?" "No," I said. "But maybe the police letter will do it." I reached into the side drawer of the buffet and pulled out the final envelope. Stamped with the sheriff's department seal. Inside, a formal letter acknowledging an active investigation into attempted undue influence over a vulnerable adult. Rachel's skin went pale. Darren stopped breathing. "You reported us," she whispered. "No," I said. "Leo did. He recorded your conversation last week when you told him, and I quote, 'Once Grandpa signs, we'll be set for life.'" The color drained from her face so fast I thought she might pass out. "You recorded us?" Darren growled, eyes narrowing at Leo. "He told me to," Leo said proudly, pointing at me. "He said truth needs proof." Darren's fists clenched. Rachel stumbled back against the chair. And then the last nail went in. On the TV screen, the video played again, this time with the part one had saved for the end. "The confession from me. The praise for my grandchildren. Lily and Leo," I said, my voice firm, "you were brave. You saw wrong, and you told the truth. You didn't protect people who were hurting others. You didn't stay quiet. You stood up. I turned to them now, in the living room, and nodded. You're everything I hoped this family would be. They didn't smile. Not yet. But I saw it in their eyes, the recognition that they were safe now. That someone had stood up for them, too. Rachel sank into the chair. You set us up, she murmured. No, I said. You did that yourselves. I just made sure it had an audience. Darren turned to leave. Come on, Rachel. Let's go. But she didn't follow. She just sat there, hands trembling, mascara smudging down her cheeks. I hope it was worth it, she said to no one in particular. All this. Betraying your own daughter. I stepped forward. Bent down slightly. No, I said. What wasn't worth it was watching the little girl I raised become someone who lies to children to steal from her own father. That's the real betrayal. I opened the front door. The breeze blew in cool and sharp. You can go now, I said. Birthday party's over. They left in silence. The silence of people who knew they'd lost. I didn't say a word for a full minute after the front door closed behind Rachel and Darren. The house fell into a kind of post-storm quiet, unnatural, heavy. You could still feel the tremble in the walls from all that had just erupted. Lily was the first to move. She came to my side and leaned her head against my hip like she had when she was 5, after a nightmare. No words. Just presence. Leo stood behind her, arms crossed like a soldier guarding the last line of defense. Blake started collecting the documents with the precision of a man who'd just defused a bomb. They'll try something else, he said. They won't stop. I know, I replied. But now they'll be swinging blind. He handed me a final sheet, already notarized, stamped, and signed in duplicate. The language was clean and cold, irrevocable trust, Whitmore Estate. Inside it, my home, my savings, my retirement, and the full list of financial instruments I'd spent a lifetime piecing together were now completely out of Rachel and Darren's reach. Even if they sued, even if they tried to contest the will, the assets were no longer mine to give. The trust was sealed. The beneficiaries, Lily and Leo, locked in. And Evelyn? She wasn't just the trustee. She was the firewall. A woman with decades of tax law and financial acumen, not to mention a temper that could turn steel to steam if you crossed her. They'll go for sympathy first, Blake said as he zipped his folio. Phone calls. Tears. Maybe even apologies. None of it will be real, I said. He nodded. But it might feel real. That's the danger. I walked him out to his car while the twins cleaned up the birthday mess inside. The sun had started to drop toward the tree line, casting long, amber shadows across the gravel drive. She was a good kid once, I said quietly, watching a squirrel dart through the weeds. They usually are, Blake replied. Until they aren't. He didn't say it with judgment. Just tired understanding. After he left, I found Evelyn already at the kitchen table. She'd stayed behind to double-check the digital records on her laptop. You know, she said without looking up, I never liked Darren. Even back when he was just some smug guy at the family cookouts. I grunted. You and me both. She clicked the trackpad once more, then shut the lid. Everything's secure. And I mean Fort Knox secure. The accounts are under the trust's EIN now. The title's refiled with the county. If they try to move anything through your name, it'll flag. Good. And I'll monitor weekly. I didn't ask you to. I'm not asking, she said, looking up. Those kids are yours. That makes them mine too. I didn't argue. That night, after Evelyn left, the twins and I sat in the living room with a deck of cards and a bowl of popcorn. The TV was off. We didn't need background noise. Just the shuffle and snap of cards and the occasional laughter from Lily when Leo forgot the rules to go fish for the third time. Around 9, the house phone rang. I let it ring. Then came my cell. Rachel's name lit up the screen. I didn't answer. There were no voicemails. Just silence. But I knew it was coming. The next day or the one after. Tears. Bargaining. Guilt. Maybe even threats. Still, I slept better than I had in weeks. The next morning, I took the kids with me to the county clerk's office. I wanted them to watch the lady behind the glass counter stamp the trust confirmation with the county seal. I wanted them to see what safety looked like when it wasn't just words, but paper and ink and law. This, I told them, is what protection looks like. Not just words. Action. Lily looked up at me. Does that mean they can't take us away? It took everything in me not to fall apart right there. No one's taking you, I said. Back home, a letter was waiting in the mailbox. From Darren. Typed. No salutation. No warmth. Just legal phrasing and veiled threats. He referenced undue influence, mental competency, and abuse of fiduciary responsibility. He accused Evelyn of coercing me. Accused me of weaponizing the children. Demanded access to all prior estate documents for transparency. I filed it under the category of too late. I scanned it, emailed it to Blake, and went back to my garden. That afternoon, the kids and I planted 3 new azalea bushes in the corner by the fence. One for me. One for Lily. One for Leo. Why these? Leo asked, kneeling in the dirt. Because they're hard to kill, I said. And they come back stronger every year. That night, another call. Rachel again. This time, she left a voicemail. Her voice was shaky. But not broken. Dad, please. This doesn't have to be like this. We made mistakes, but we're still your family. Darren's he's under pressure. I never wanted to hurt you. She paused. I miss you. Click. I played it once. Then deleted it. They weren't sorry. They were cornered. And now that the trust was sealed, they were trapped. The storm came 3 days later. Not the kind that rattles the windows or floods the gutters, but the kind that arrives in manila envelopes, delivered by grim-faced couriers wearing cheap ties. I was sipping tea when I heard the knock, and I knew before I opened the door what it was. Henry Whitmore, the man asked. I nodded. You've been served. He handed me 2 envelopes, one with Darren's name on the return label, the other from a firm I didn't recognize. I thanked him, closed the door, and walked them straight to the kitchen table like I was setting down a bomb. Leo and Lily watched from the hallway. They'd learned by now that silence had its own weight. I opened the first envelope. Darren's attorney had filed an emergency motion with the county court claiming I was under undue influence and emotional duress, and that the trust should be deemed invalid until I underwent a psychological evaluation. Rachel had attached a sworn statement alleging erratic behavior, citing everything from my refusal to answer phone calls to sudden financial restructuring without consulting immediate family. The second envelope contained a request for a temporary restraining order against Evelyn. They were trying to disqualify her as trustee, citing conflict of interest and emotional coercion. Darren claimed she had isolated me and inserted herself into sensitive legal decisions to benefit herself and her extended family. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I picked up the phone and called Blake. He didn't even let me finish reading before interrupting. Let them try, he said. It's a Hail Mary. They're suing, I said. They're bluffing. But this didn't feel like a bluff. This was desperation weaponized. The kind of legal aggression you only see when someone realizes the well has gone dry and they're still thirsty. Evelyn came over that afternoon with a copy of her own summons. "Those little shits," she muttered, dropping it on the table. "I've handled estates for 30 years and never once been accused of coercion. If I wanted your money, I'd have married you after Martha died." I smirked. "Would have been cheaper." She gave me a look. Blake came by that evening with counterfilings. He was calm, but surgical in his wording. "We're not just playing defense anymore," he said. "We're filing for malicious prosecution, elder exploitation, and child endangerment. I have statements from the twins. We'll file those under seal, but the court will see them." Lily raised her head from the couch. "We're testifying." Blake gave her a soft smile. "Only if necessary. Your statement already says more than enough." He handed me one last document, an official notice of investigation from the sheriff's department. The one we'd already known was coming, but now it was real. Signed and dated. The charge? Attempted financial coercion of a dependent elder. "That's the big one," Blake said. "If it sticks, they lose everything. Including visitation rights." I sat back in my chair, heart thudding slower now. "They'll burn the whole family down before they let that happen." "They already tried," Evelyn said. "They just weren't expecting us to have the matches too." The hearing was set for a week later. In the days leading up to it, Rachel called 6 times. Left messages that swung from apologetic to furious to tearful. Darren never called. But his lawyer sent 2 more letters, one demanding an immediate meeting to resolve the matter privately, and another warning of reputational consequences for all parties involved. I didn't respond to either. Instead, I spent my mornings in the garden and my evenings with the twins, playing board games or watching black and white westerns. Simple routines. Grounding rituals. We talked openly now, about trust, about betrayal, about the difference between being sorry and being sorry you got caught. "They don't love you," Leo said one night. "Not really." I didn't argue. "I think they did once," Lily said. "But then they loved money more." Maybe that was true. Maybe it wasn't. But it didn't matter anymore. The morning of the hearing, we dressed in quiet. I wore the navy suit I'd kept since Martha's funeral, still pressed, still somber. Leo wore a button-up with a clip-on tie. Lily wore a navy dress with a flower pin on the collar. She looked older than 10. They both did. Evelyn drove us in her station wagon. Blake met us on the courthouse steps. Rachel and Darren were already inside. Rachel looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her face was drawn, mascara smudged. Darren wore a suit too nice for a man this deep in debt. He didn't look at me. Not once. The judge was a woman in her 60s with a gaze like broken glass, hard, sharp, unflinching. She read through the filings with the patience of someone who'd seen every kind of family betrayal twice. Blake spoke first, presenting the trust, the video, the statements from the twins. He handed over Rachel's note, the recorded voicemail, the time-stamped documents, the sheriff's investigation. Rachel's lawyer sputtered a defense about emotional stress and concern for an aging parent. The judge raised one eyebrow. By forging documents and promising puppies in exchange for silence. The room fell still. 10 minutes later, the judge ruled. The trust stood. The court dismissed Darren's emergency motion. The accusations of coercion were unfounded. Evelyn remained trustee. The sheriff's investigation would continue. Rachel and Darren were warned, in no uncertain terms, that further legal action would result in sanctions. And visitation? Suspended, indefinitely. Outside the courthouse, Rachel broke down. She crumpled to the concrete like a marionette with its strings cut. Darren tried to pull her up, but she slapped his hand away. Lily tugged my sleeve. Can we go home now? I nodded. We didn't celebrate. But we did sleep. And for the first time in months, it was dreamless. A month passed. The house was quiet now, but not the hollow kind of quiet it had once been, filled with lurking fear and unspoken threats. This was the good kind. Peaceful. Honest. The kind of silence that meant no one was scheming behind the walls or whispering on the other end of a phone line. The leaves had turned fully by then, rich oranges and rusted reds blanketing the yard. Autumn was in full swing, and so was the recovery. I spent my mornings out back with the twins, knees deep in dirt, hands stained from turning soil and planting bulbs that wouldn't bloom until spring. That was the lesson in all this: the best things take time. And the most important ones? You plant them before you see the results. Because real love, real family, doesn't show itself in emergencies. It shows up in gardens and scraped knees and sitting still long enough to listen when a child is too afraid to speak. You sure we're doing this right? Leo asked one morning, holding a spade full of compost like it might bite him. If you're asking that, I said, you probably are. Lily giggled, adjusting her gloves. Grandpa's garden rules: plant deep, water steady, and don't stomp where you sow. That last one sound like a metaphor? Leo asked. I nodded. Everything is, if you're paying attention. We were planting tomatoes that day. A little late in the season, but I didn't care. I'd missed the early planting window while fending off the wolves, and now I was stubborn enough to see if they'd sprout anyway. Besides, it wasn't about the harvest. It was about the act. Think they'll come back? Lily asked suddenly. Her voice was calm, but her fingers had gone still in the dirt. I didn't need her to clarify. I knew she meant Rachel and Darren. They might, I said. People like that don't stay gone forever. Especially when they still think they're owed something. Leo looked up. What if they try something again? They won't get far. But what if they try? I set down my spade and sat back on my heels. Then we'll do what we always do, I said. We'll stand together. We'll tell the truth. And we'll protect what's ours. They didn't say anything for a moment. Then Lily asked, do you still love her? That question hit harder than I expected. Yes, I said. But not the way I used to. She looked confused, so I added, love doesn't mean ignoring what someone does. And it doesn't mean letting them keep hurting you. Love just means, part of you remembers who they were before they forgot. Leo nodded. I think I still love her too. That's okay, I said. You can love someone and still keep your distance. The wind blew across the yard, carrying the scent of turned soil and the sharp tang of fall. I looked over at the edge of the property, where the mailbox sat half buried in leaves. I hadn't received another letter since the court ruling. No calls. No messages. They were gone. But they weren't forgotten. That's the thing about scars, they don't vanish. They just stop bleeding. Evelyn came by around lunch with a tray of sandwiches and that smug little grin she wore when she knew she'd been right about something but was too polite to say it out loud. Garden's coming along, she said. You doubted me? She chuckled. I doubted your knees. Fair. She joined us on the porch. The kids brought out lemonade. It felt like summer again, even if the wind said otherwise. They'll ask you to forgive them eventually, Evelyn said quietly. I know. Will you? I took a long sip of lemonade. That depends. On what? Whether they're sorry, I said. Or just sorry they lost. She nodded. That was all we needed to say. That afternoon, the twins and I built the treehouse Leo had been dreaming about since this all began. Just a small platform in the oak behind the shed, with a railing, a tarp roof, and a little rope ladder. Nothing fancy. Just theirs. We carved our initials into the base post. L+L+H. I let them pick the name. They chose Fort Whitmore. I didn't argue. As the sun began to set, casting gold across the yard, Lily climbed down from the fort and sat beside me in the grass. She looked up at the trees, then down at the dirt. "I'm glad you didn't give up," she said softly. "Me too," I replied. "You were brave." I looked at her, this child who had once knocked on my window in the middle of a storm to warn me of danger no 10-year-old should ever carry. "No," I said. "You were." She smiled. Leo joined us a few minutes later, cheeks flushed from climbing. "So what now?" "Now," I said. "We live." And we did. We raked leaves. We painted the porch. We baked bread that didn't rise right and fed it to birds that didn't care. We argued over card games and laughed until our stomachs hurt. We lived. Because they hadn't taken everything. They hadn't taken the most important things. The truth. The trust. And the time we still had together. I used to think revenge meant destruction. But this wasn't about revenge. It was about reclamation. And sometimes, the best way to win isn't with fire or fury, it's by planting something that grows long after the liars are gone. And watching it bloom.